If I had to guess how most of us enjoy Eggs Benedict, it would be if someone else were making it, right? I mean, your favorite little breakfast spot or perhaps at a Sunday brunch. Most don't dare attempt this because that damn Hollandaise sauce is, well...
a giant pain in the ass.
Well, it doesn't need to be that way anymore. With just a handful of ingredients, you can start enjoying this overpriced breakfast staple at home. This is Kitchen Serious. So I'm going to go through the traditional way to make it, as well as a version that gives you Hollandaise in under 5 minutes, with the use of a hand blender. On top of that, I'm also going to throw in a foolproof method for fixing a broken sauce, so be sure to stick around. The sauce itself only has a few ingredients: egg yolks, butter, lemon juice, a pinch of salt, and just a pinch of cayenne. As always, it's best practice to get everything ready and measured out, because you'll want to whisk continuously once the process starts. While you're doing that, bring a pot of water up to a boil. This will be the source of our heat as we whisk the butter into the egg mixture. Speaking of the butter, I use 1 stick to 3 yolks as an easy ratio to remember. This will make enough Hollandaise for around 6 to 8 bennies, so you can, of course, splurge or stretch it out if needed. So in a heat-safe bowl, I'm going to add everything but the butter and give it a good whisk. A quick note about the butter is that I just simply melt 1 stick. I don't clarify it, I use everything. So this is probably going to be a departure from a lot of the recipes you read. Which begs the question, well, why use clarified butter? Well, in all honesty, it can prevent curdling because it binds the egg yolks and the liquid together. But overall, I've not really had an issue using just straight butter. So the important thing to remember is you always want to add a healthy tablespoon of room temperature water to your egg mixture. This will make the process go a lot smoother. Now comes the whisking. Now, because one hand whisks while the other adds the butter, it's important to find a right-sized bowl-pot combination that allows you to sit your bowl on top without being submerged in the water. As we cook the egg mixture, you can slowly start to see it thicken and get foamy. I'll periodically just pull it off the heat just to make sure it's not cooking too fast. Once you see that it's reached a thick and foamy point, it's your cue to start adding the butter. Always start with just a little bit of the butter to start the emulsion. An emulsion is joining 2 things that don't normally mix well together. A vinaigrette is another example of an emulsion, vinegar and oil. Once you get that initial butter mixed in, you can now slowly pour the rest in. Use a nice slow, steady stream. Don't just dump the whole thing in. Once you've got roughly half the butter added, it's now safe to just pull off the heat and finish pouring in the rest. Once everything is incorporated, you can now hold your sauce until it's ready to be used. This is actually where tragedy seems to strike more often than not. If you keep it in an area that's too hot, then you'll get that dreaded broken sauce where the butter and eggs separate from one another. But I'm going to show you how to fix that in a second. A technique I use to hold this is to turn on the oven at its lowest warm setting. For me, it's 170 Fahrenheit, 77 Celsius. And I like to leave the door slightly open. This will keep your Hollandaise right at that sweet spot until you're ready to use it. With that out of the way, the pot with the boiling water will be used to poach the eggs. As a rule, I like to have around 4 inches of water when I'm poaching. I'll also add a dash of vinegar to help those egg whites from getting overly wispy. The best way to avoid all that is to crack your eggs into a fine mesh strainer and get rid of the watery fluid that's in there along with the yolk and the white. The water should be at a simmer, not a boil. If you're poaching 1 egg at a time, I like to make a little vortex to keep the whites together. I'm doing 2 at a time, so I'm just going to gently pour them into the water. For a nice runny yolk, you'll want to pull these out after 3 minutes. If you're like me and prefer more of an over medium yolk, you can go an extra minute. Also, for timing things out, right before I drop my eggs in, I'm going to drop my English muffins in the toaster. This ensures everything comes out together at relatively the same time. Another trick for speedy Eggs Benedict is to poach the Canadian bacon alongside the eggs. I know it's not a sexy option, but the efficiency is hard to beat. It's already cooked, so heating it up is all you're after. Okay, muffins out. Bacon is on. Eggs on. Now there's nothing left to do but slather on that liquid gold and dust with a little extra cayenne. And, well, before I show you the uber fast method to make hollandaise, I've got Eggs Benny calling. I'll be right back. So that brings us to one piece of kitchen equipment I don't use that often, but I'm glad I have. That's a stick blender, or an immersion blender. If you don't have one and would like to get this particular one, which I rate highly by the way, please use the link in the description. It's a great way to spoil yourself with another piece of equipment while helping out the channel at the same time. When I say this is easy, I mean easy. Here I've got a little deli container that actually is the perfect circumference for getting that stick blender all the way to the bottom. So I'm gonna add my eggs, a little bit of water, my salt, my lemon juice, and my cayenne. I'm gonna add all that just like before, and I'm gonna start to blend. Almost immediately it gets pretty pale in color, and you can start adding your butter. I'm just gonna add just a touch in the beginning, get that emulsion going, and then you can just slowly drizzle the rest in. And just like before, it gets nice and thick as you add your butter. Zero whisking, you gotta love that. So I mixed mine for another 60 seconds and am left with the perfect hollandaise. And as many of you know, when you're making hollandaise, you don't always get that fairy tale ending. And it ends up broken, looking like this, where the butter and the eggs are separated and not looking good. But don't throw it out. You can save it. Just pull it off the heat, add a little bit of cold water, and just whisk away. You'll see that magically the sauce will return. It doesn't take much water at all. In fact, right here I used probably just a little too much water. You can always add more. But if this happens to you where you save it but it's a little runny, go ahead and put it back on the heat and whisk away, and it will thicken again. So hopefully now, instead of going out to the diner and spending an arm and a leg, you can whip this up at home. Thanks for checking out Kitchen Serious, everybody. I will see you next time.